For instance, the consumable for the SP6000 I was telling you is 8 different cartridges, and each of those cartridges is sold for about $200. So that means 8 cartridges, you're spending about $1,600 for consumables that will finish in another 1 or 3 months. Whereas for the Chinese brand, all you need is an SP600 printer head that is sold for 223 USD, just that one, and a bottle of ink that is sold for about $15 or $20 per bottle. So, and those 4 bottles will last you about a month. So, which means in any 3-month cycle, you're spending less than $300 or $400. Whereas in any 3-month cycle with these high-end printers, you're spending about $1,600. So you need to think about the broader conversation when it comes to why do I need a printer. This video is not about which printer is best in terms of quality. This video is about which printer should you buy given the pocket size that you have. Alright guys, welcome to another video. Many of you have sent me messages, you've contacted me on WhatsApp, even on Facebook, and you've asked one single question: how do I know what printer is best for me to buy? In this video, I will not claim to have the ultimate answer for you because that can vary depending on a couple of factors, as you will soon see. But I will do the best I can to open your eyes to what you can look at that will help your decision making in determining what printer is best for you to buy. But before we continue, I want you to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, turn on the notification bell, and let us proceed. When it comes to the printer manufacturing space, it's mostly divided into 2 categories. One, the higher end printers, and then secondly, the Chinese brands. The higher end printers are usually the printers that are common in the West. So think of Europe, think of America. But the other set is the Chinese brands. But first and foremost, these 2 brands have their pros and their cons, as you will soon see. Now let's dive right in. Let's start from the high-end brands. See, the high-end brands have some of the best capacities in the world. When it comes to sharpness, vividness, clarity of print, quality of production, you can always get them with these high-end brands. What are the high-end brands? Epson, Canon, HP. They are basically other printers, but they are quite low-key, like Oki and some other small brands like that. Maybe Brother for the black and white. But when it comes to large format printers, these 3 brands, Epson, Canon and HP, are like the 3 companies that dominate this space. You find them in anywhere in Europe, you find them in anywhere in America, and they are selling like a ton. When it comes to quality, you get the best quality possible. Take for instance the Epson P6000. It's a 24-inch printer and it boasts 8 color system, which means you need 8 different colors to be able to output on that printer. That is massive. On the SP600, you only use 4 colors, right? So you see that the Epson is by far able to reach different tones, different ranges, and the vividness of the color is by no means some of the best in the industry. So, and the print quality of the Epson P6000 is dubbed to be able to last for anywhere from 100 to 200 years. For the black and white, we can even last for as long as 400 years. Has somebody been able to test that just yet? I don't know. You will find similar qualities with HP, you will find similar qualities with Canon. So if we're talking about some of the best printing qualities ever, you see those high-end brands, that's what you should go for. The problem is though, there's a caveat. Because of the kinds of printers that they are, and especially because of their cost, you already have to have had a certain kind of customer base for you to be able to say, okay, this is the printer that I'm going to buy, or this is not the printer that I'm going to buy. So let's say you take Epson for instance. The P6000 is sold for about $3,000. So if you have such a printer and your customer base are like Fortune 500, Silicon Valley customers, and maybe you print luxury brands, maybe for art companies and exhibition companies, then you don't have a problem with servicing this kind of printers. Again, if you reside in Europe, maybe anywhere in Europe and then anywhere in America, then the print per square feet or the printing cost already may accommodate that kind of luxury printing, because I think the last time I had a conversation, I think it prints $50 or whatever, anywhere from $20 to $50 per square feet in the United States. So that's quite a lot of money. So you can easily recoup that investment, especially with 3,000. But don't forget, it's a 24-inch printer, right? And in Nigeria currency, 3,000 US dollars is exactly the same thing as saying close to 5 million naira. So, which means people in Africa, people in some of like the very interior parts of Argentina, Cuba, so many other countries like that, unless they have access to government contracts and all of that, they won't be able to afford such printing. So, what printer should you buy? Well, the question is, what cost can you afford? Right? We'll touch that. The second part that makes these printers extremely unique and extremely versatile is that you also have the ability to get access to documentation from these printers. So think of any printer under the Epson model, think of any printer under the HP model, think of any printer under the Canon model. All you just need to do is go to Google and search HP so and so driver, and then you get it. HP so and so this error, and then you get several people have that error. So you get access to documentation about any kind of issues, any kind of problems that may be arising with your machine. So not only are the printing qualities very vivid, very sharp, they also compensate for the cost in that you get access to great resources that are very critical, especially if you are a printer and you expect to last long. The third one is customer support, which is similar to documentation. Customer support, you get access to their real-time customer support. You can even call the company to say, okay, my printer has this problem, my printer doesn't have this problem. Then they can give you, instructions on what to do. You get access to warranties. You can even take it to those companies and then you probably replace or fix it for you. So that if budget is not a problem for you, and then you are able to, recoup the cost in a short amount of time, and you don't have a problem with printing luxury prints like maybe print for banks, print for art exhibition, art shows, or you have wealthy clients, or you have even middle class, middle range customers who can afford your printing cost at your extremely wonderful quality, then any of these high-end models are very good for you. So now, on the issue of cost, let's bring in the Chinese models. How do they stack up? So first and foremost, we need to clear a couple of things out of the way before we continue the conversation about the Chinese models. So there's a myth, right? When people say things like one brand is better than another with Chinese printers, that is absolutely, let's just say that is about 70% correct. They may be correct in certain senses, but in most of the cases, you see these printers are just basically the same things. What happens is in China, there are very few manufacturers, but plenty retailers, right? So maybe for every 5 manufacturers, you have like 200 retailers who are just going to slap their brand on what those 5 manufacturers make. So on the long run, you have very few manufacturers, but extremely plenty retailers. And because the manufacturers are high productive and high output, you can get thousands of machines from these 5 manufacturers that can service 100 to 550 to 100 or 200 retailers. So that's where names like Yingge, Mimage, World Color, even this South African brand called am.co.za, they also just buy OEM from China and then slap their numbers on it, and then maybe make some few tweaks here and there. That's when it comes to those minor differences between each other. But from my experience over the past 5 years, all of these machines are basically the same. So when it comes to print quality, they are all flat. You're not going to get one quality from this printer that you can't get from this printer. Now, I must draw a caveat. So when it comes to Chinese printers, you have basically about 4 different categories of printer heads. So with the Chinese machines, the printer heads are what really give. So you have 4 different categories: the TX800, the most popular of them is the XP600, then you have DX5, and then you have i3200. There are a couple other heads like ZA head and so many other kinds of head, Ricoh head and all of that. But see, these 4, the TX800 is even waning a bit now, the Epson XP600, the i3200, and then the DX5 are like the 4 major printer heads that are common with these Chinese machines. Now, the Chinese machines, regardless of what printer head you're using, are guaranteed to be at least, and mark my word on the subject, at least 70% cheaper than what you get in Europe and the US. 70% cheaper. For instance, the XP600 large format machine is sold for about 2,500 US dollars. In Nigeria, that is way lesser than 4 million naira, maybe 4.3 million naira. And I just told you a very high price because the average benchmark is about 1,800 to 2,000 US dollars. But let's just say the highest end model of the XP600 is about 2,500 dollars. Now stack that up with a 2,850 US dollars 24-inch printer from Epson. The Chinese brand is about $1,800 to $2,500 for 6 feet machine, whereas the Epson P6000 is 24 inches at close to $3,000. So my 5 million naira can get me almost 2 different machines of a Chinese brand and only one of a very small. Do you know what 24 inches is? This is what 24 inches is. It's pretty small, right? So maximum of 2 feet, that's what 24 inches is. So you can't really do anything major with that thing for that high price. But when it comes to Chinese machine, your small money can get you a big output, right? In terms of a very large machine. So this is how the Chinese broke into the African market. They saw that they had less spending capacity, and then they needed something that could work. So that's how they broke into the market. Now, on that spectrum, you can then say, okay, well, I'm pairing a Chinese machine with an i3200 board and an i3200 printer head, or I am pairing it with a XP600 or a DX5 or a TX600. Regardless, you are buying a lower end machine, lower priced machine, but with a specific kind of printer head that can work with it. So whether you like it or not, on terms of cost, the Chinese manufacturers beat the European counterparts. In fact, that's how they entered into Africa, and they have made a ton of money. I was talking to Yinge one of these days, and I said, how many units of large format machines have you sold all across the world? And in 2021, she told me about 1 million units or more. So you see, that's a lot of scale. Has Epson been able to sell 1 million units of the P6000? I don't know. But as Chinese machines have been able to sell it, yes. And I mean, those numbers should have tripled by now, just 3 years later. So this is an effective strategy for the Chinese, and it's working. So in terms of cost, if cost is your reason for wanting a large format machine, then the Chinese brands are going to be your best bet. But like I said at the beginning, these two categories have their pros and have their cons. So the pros of the Chinese machine is that it's cheap, very cost effective, low barrier of entry, it's a very low hanging fruit. Anybody can get a large format machine, especially a Chinese brand. But they have a few drawbacks. Drawback number one is that if you are selling a machine that is about $24,000 for the 5.5 feet large format machine of the Epson for $24,000, and you are selling a bigger machine than that from China using an XP600 head for 10% of that cost, what is the catch? The electronic boards. So you would have a very substandard electronic board, a very substandard architecture, that all it's needed to do is just to withstand a few shocks here and there, and then work at a minimal level. So they are not heavy duty machines as most people think that they are. So that's why once you use an XP600 large format, the Chinese brand machine, for a while you start to notice a few problems. Either the nozzles begin to fail, either the board just collapses, either something funny just happens to those machines that you really cannot explain. You don't have to do a lot of thinking to realize that it's the electronic component that usually has a problem. If you are trying to subsidize the cost of something at 10% the value of a standard model, something has to give. And most of the time, as I have seen from experience over the last 5 years, it's the electronic component that gives. Metal is not difficult to produce in China. As a matter of fact, they have one of the most advanced steel industries in the world. So producing metal at scale is not a problem for them. But you see, the electronic components, something has to give, right? So the first and foremost with cheap Chinese large format machines is that you are going to have very substandard electronic architecture. Keep that in mind, so that you don't feel bad along the line when you have bought the machine and maybe 1 year, 2 years down the line is giving you stress. It will definitely give you stress because the boards are not built for such heavy duty applications over a long period of time. So the average life expectancy of a Chinese large format machine is about 4 years. After 4 years, you are advised to just leave that machine and go somewhere else. Right, these are not common with some of these high-end models, right? You can use them for a much longer time than that, and then the quality is never the same. Now let's go to the second drawback that the Chinese machines have. You see, the second drawback is also as bad as the first. So you have almost zero documentation about these machines. Now don't forget that printing technology is not an Asian technology per se. The advancement in printing technology came from the West, came from the Renaissance, came all the way down to the printing technology in Germany, and they came back all the way down across the world and then refined by Europe and America to provide what you would call a piezoelectric that is the most common printing technology for the large format machines. So those are not Chinese technology. So they are copied versions of the European system. So you don't expect China to have a mastery of that. It doesn't mean they don't have some measure of mastery already after using so many of these machines over a long period of time. Now don't forget, very few machines are not produced in China. So China does have intellectual property of many of these companies and is able to reproduce at scale. But when it comes to having the best understanding of how these machines work and accurate documentation about their working processes, you find it extremely difficult for Chinese people to do. And that's apart from the fact that just naturally Chinese are not very patient people, right? And again, there's a language barrier. So to do a documentation in another language you're not familiar with, I've seen to be a really serious geopolitical problem that Chinese naturally have. So if you're going for the low-end Chinese models, do remember that you're not going to get the best of documentations, and don't feel bad about it. Think of when you're paying 10% cost of what you would have gotten from an average American company that invests heavily in research and development, that invests heavily in so many other infrastructure that keeps those companies standard and the best in the world. Now, let me give you another example. So one time, I had a problem with a Mimage machine, and I needed to fix that Mimage machine. But I didn't know exactly how to go about it because the component that got spoiled, I didn't know where to find it immediately other than importing. So what I did was I took the driver board, which was the thing that spoiled in the Mimage machine. I took the driver board from a Yingge machine and I slotted it into a Mimage machine, and it worked perfectly. So you can see how cross-platform those machines are. In the one case, it is a good thing because it just means I can take from this place and use here. But you see, you can't get that kind of cross-platform between Epson and Canon or Epson and HP. They have a research and development team that builds specific components for their models. In fact, even between models, in some cases, you don't have the same component across models, so that you can always buy the new end model. So you see, research and development and product design works directly with their marketing department, so they know it's a marketing strategy for them to keep selling over a long period of time and to keep selling new printers to you every time. But in China, it's a very basic setup. Some guy is just a manufacturer, produces the machine at scale, and then you guys just show up and then you buy and then slap your name on it. There's no particular technology that they own enough to want to say, okay, well, let's do a documentation on the subject. So if you don't have proper documentations and you have to go online and then you scavenge up and down till you meet people like us, that's exactly why. One, because the profit margin on this production is very slim. You can't even afford a very standard research and development team to begin with. So you can't put it at their doorstep. If you're buying something for 10% the cost of what you can get as standard, you shouldn't blame the Chinese. Now, this also explains a couple of things. Let's move to the next drawback, which is the last drawback that I'm going to point out, is that they don't also have excellent customer support. So when you're choosing a machine because it is cheaper, also remember that the Chinese don't have excellent customer support. If you were following what I just said, it's very clear why the Chinese are not going to give you excellent customer support. At what cost? Right? I mean, if you're buying something for less than $3,000 and if you're buying the i3-200, it is never more than $7,000. Whereas the counterpart in Epson S60600 is sold for close to 24,000 or 27,000 US dollars. So think about it. I'm buying something for $7,000 and someone is selling the same thing for $26,000. Is it really the same thing? So what is going away? So customer support is going away, right? R&D is going away. There's not a lot of support, not a lot of documentation, and then substandard product is what you're going to get at that price. Does it mean it doesn't work? The interesting thing is that these machines work effectively. They print what you want, they print full color. The technology is impressive. They had to cross a certain technological barrier to be able to get that done. So you get people like Shenyang, Hoson powering the electronic components business for them, and then the rest is just building the body components and plenty other things like that. And I must credit China for really helping us break certain barriers, because a lot of us wouldn't have even afforded a machine if we had continued with the European or American models, right? And those things were built for those economies because they are wealthy economies, and they think of long term rather than short term, right? So if you are looking for something that is a quick barrier for entry, that is low barrier for entry, you can quickly enter into it, then the Chinese models or business and large format machines are the best for you. Will you get what you want? I can assure you, you'll get far more than you want, right? Most most large format printing businesses in Nigeria, as much as 90%, are these Chinese brands. So you don't have anything to worry about whether it can output. But when it comes to longevity, when it comes to ease of use and all of that, you have a problem. So, like I was saying, don't expect customer service, right? So once you are buying, don't expect customer service. Of course, I said that in a generic sense. From experience over a long period of time, I actually do know some Chinese companies that sell, cheaper machines, and then they do have, similar American style type of customer service. They're not perfect, they are still the same impatient sets of Chinese people, but they would still at least listen to you, and in some cases even give you a refund or give you a warranty. They don't give refunds, but they give you a warranty. Only that, also expect there's no warranty on printer heads, and once you buy the machine and it enters into your store, it also cannot be returned, especially when you open the box. So what machine should you buy? So there are three major considerations like I have highlighted. One is cost, second one is customer service, and then third one is durability of that machine. If cost is an issue for you, then it just means your opportunity cost is durability and customer service. But if cost is not a problem for you, then that means you're ready to pay heavily, and then you're ready to get value for your money. Will you get value for your money in the Chinese brand? I think you get even more value for your money, only that you are looking for more than you need, right? And you are looking for more than you afford. You just already explains why. Immediately you buy a machine from a Chinese supplier, and then you start chatting them about helping you, they just go quiet. It's because they see themselves as helping you rather than you as seeing them as helping them. And to be honest, they actually are helping the world with being able to bring cost barrier down for so many other people to be able to enter. So that's pretty much how you should go about your choice for machines. If you're deep pocketed, your customers are wealthy, they don't have a problem with paying whatever price you tell them, you're in the premium space, luxury printing, you print for Fortune 500 companies, don't bother yourself with the Chinese brands, because you cannot really enjoy printing when you go the Chinese route. It'll get some job done, but as a professional printer, you should upgrade. But if you're printing somewhere in the down south of the world, Africa, Colombia, some of those other not very rich countries, and the funny thing is that I have customers in Canada, I have customers in the United States, I have customers in the United Kingdom, and I have customers in some of these Scandinavian countries, Belarus, and some of these countries like that. So I have customers all over the world, and I see them using Chinese machines. So it's a function of cost, really, not more about location. Only though the global south is just a lot more on the lower income spectrum than the rest of the world. So I think that's pretty much it. What machine should you pick? Well, pick from any of these two categories, right? And then let cost determine what you're going to pick, and then let your customers determine it. But don't buy something that you can't use. I've seen people who buy Epson and HP and bring it to Nigeria, and then they can't really maintain those machines. Let me give you another thing to think about. If you buy some of these machines, what about the consumables? For instance, the consumable for the SP6000 I was telling you is 8 different cartridges, and each of those cartridges is sold for about $200. So that means 8 cartridges, you're spending about 1,600 for consumables that will finish in another 1 or 3 months. Whereas for the Chinese brand, all you need is an SP600 printer head that is sold for $223, just that one, and a bottle of ink that is sold for about $15 or $20 per bottle. So, and those 4 bottles will last you about a month. So, which means in any 3-month cycle, you're spending less than $300 or $400. Whereas in any 3-month cycle with these high-end printers, you're spending about 1,600. So you need to think about the broader conversation when it comes to why do I need a printer. This video is not about which printer is best in terms of quality. This video is about which printer should you buy given the pocket size that you have, right? Maybe later we'll do a video on which printer has more quality than the other. But you're a small player, you're just trying to get started in life, you don't know exactly where to get money, or you have so much money, what printer can you buy, what is the lowest barrier of entry? Just go with the Chinese, right? And they do excellent printing technology, and their printer is not bad. Only relatively compared to those ones, you just can't compare. There's no basis for comparison. The West has enough funding, enough R&D to be able to pull off great technology that the Chinese will always just have to copy from till maybe they develop their society even better. So that's pretty much it. But by the way, I do have something that, if say for instance you want to borrow from my experience, in the 5 year period, I've seen a lot, right? And I've been able to work with certain companies. I've been able to sell machines across the world already. So I know that you can also get the best of both worlds. You can get cheaper machine and get excellent customer support, which is the issue that the Chinese have. So that's why I have a company I normally recommend to people, and I have a company that I normally buy from, right? And that's how I sell to customers. So if you really wish to buy from us because we're being a help to you in any way, then of course reach me out on WhatsApp. The number is in the link. The number is in the link in the description below, and then we will sell you good large format printers, Chinese brands that have excellent customer service, so you can get the best of both worlds in a certain sense of the way. But regardless of that, you can always go online, do some research. Always ensure to keep in consideration things like customer service and then documentation, which is, so I think we'll be able to cover some of the most important things to consider when you're shopping for a new printer. Now, if this has helped you, I want you to again hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, go into the comment section below and let us know what you think. What machine do you use? Use a Chinese machine, use an Epson, use an HP. What has your experiences been, in a short while of using those printers, or however long you've been using them? And I will see you in another video. Bye. Take care. Peace. Always on the go, yeah.